You're listening to Raiding the Fringe with Poda, Ostinius, Nehpets, and Dr. Lee. From ancient civilizations to the cutting edge of science, from exploring the outer reaches of space to the Atlantean depths, we discuss the topics of the unknown and the possibilities of the bizarre. Are you hungry to expand your horizons? Come get your fill as we raid the fringe.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Raiding the Fringe. With me, you have Dr. Lee.
Hello.
Ostinius.
Hello.
Poda.
What's up?
And as you all well know, myself as Net. So, today I believe that we chose the topic of human-animal hybrids, I believe. Any type. You can wear tigers, wear panthers, Where are they? Where could they be? You know, stuff like that. So, who has the most to say about this? Anybody feel they are a were expert of some sort?
Well, it doesn't always have to wear, because with the were like a werewolf, you're traveling back and forth. But what about centaurs and mermaids? And are they their own thing, or are they half human?
Yeah, see, yep. I would say they're half human.
I don't. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you could definitely say that. I guess I was going along the lines of an animal or a creature that could choose to be either human or the animal. But yes, I guess centaurs and mermaids and satyrs and anything else from Greece can possibly be an example. Yeah.
And then there's another type. What about like the island of Dr. Moreau, where they're literally hybrids? They don't change back and forth, but they're kind of very bestial people.
I was going to bring that up too. I was going to wait till we got into it a little bit.
I mean, yes. So now that we've put up an umbrella of sorts of all the different types of human-animal hybrids, who'd like to kick off with their craziest opinion of it? Poda, as an expert on human-animal hybrids, what would you say?
Expert, huh?
I'm just going by what I've heard.
All your extensive research.
And past relationships. No, I get you. I believe it is real. They do exist in the world today. Maybe not to the extent as Dr. Monroe, but we're well on our way. And I believe human splicing DNA will be a new trend in body modification, like cat eyes or the sense of smell or the claws and fur and all that stuff. And then that brings in all kinds of other identification conversations in ethical discussion in law-abiding citizens. Like, if this person you know is half wolf and he kills 3 people in this house, you can't look for the same DNA as you would a regular crime scene for a murderer. Plus, you'd have to take into account, well, maybe he just had a bad day. Does he have rabies? I mean, the ethics in it, because it would bring in a whole new branch of law and snowflake power and all kinds of interesting things.
So I'm going to have to stop you before we go on and just ask one question, though. Like, okay, so you have, things where you can sharpen your teeth or split your tongue or put in implants to make yourself look kind of more like an animal. But when you mentioned cat eyes, how would that actually work? Would they take your eyes out and put something that they created in a lab that has your DNA, and so that it would work for you? Or would there be an actual transformation that would take months for your eye to change into that thing?
Okay, I'd like to enter into this one because at this point, science has already started doing this. When you implant an animal body part into a grown person, there's a high chance of rejection. The thing will die. It doesn't work. So what they're doing now is they're taking embryos and implanting foreign DNA into them. They started off with mice and rats and injecting human DNA into them. And it's a two-part, because they have to first inject into the rat something that tells it not to grow that certain body part. And then they inject the human DNA, and because they're growing up together, the human DNA takes over and grows that part inside the animal. And so they've been able to tailor custom which parts become more human in these animals. And this is only within the last couple of years that they've actually legally allowed it. and they're growing them in pigs and monkeys now, and it's getting to the point where we will be able to get those specific body parts. But so far, for the most part, it has to be grown from birth, or from pre-birth, from the embryo state, in order for it to really work.
Yeah, I don't think that you could just, chop off a part and splice it with a different part, and now you've got cat eyes. Like, it would have to be something from birth or some sort of genetic modifier in that embryo stage. I mean, not even talking like human animal hybrids, talking an animal hybrid. They spliced spider DNA with goats, and so their milk can produce like spider silk. So using an extractor proper kind of thing, they have these weird spider goat hybrids that by stretching out the fibrous material in their milk, they can make tremendous strands of spider silk, which is, a crazy strong and super, super powerful. But it is just this weird thing that they could do through that. So it'd have to be something that, from birth. I don't think that you could do, a just like lop one off and sew on another, and now I've got a tentacle arm or something. You know what I mean?
Okay. So getting more onto the human animal part of it, you said, Poda, earlier that you believe that these things exist today. So not going into the genetic modification of it, but are you telling me that you believe that there are human-animal hybrids that exist by natural means at all?
Yes, and I'm sure they have existed, and they continue to exist, because humans as a species are kind of fucked up, and they fuck animals. I'm not saying these things that were birthed actually made it all the way into a movie, but I'm sure there was some stuff that got left in the woods. But as far as the traditional sense of a human-animal hybrid that we've seen and understand from stories and movies, I don't think we're quite there at that point yet.
So do you think that's how the Sasquatch came to be? Is that what you're saying? Like, out in the woods, people fucking animals, getting away with it because they ain't telling anybody when they get back to camp. And, one day it was this this hairy little creature in the forest, and since it was half human, it became the Sasquatch?
Yeah, it's possible. Like, there was a tribe of people back in the day that just, kept Gigantopithecus for other reasons, and just kept going down a different path of genetic modification with a lot of insertion.
So going with a different path of not bestiality, Lee, what's your feeling on some of these animal-human hybrid ideas? I mean, do you believe that there's actual ones out there, or do you agree or disagree with Poda?
Well, if we're discounting bestiality, I don't think it's possible for it to be happening right now as far as the mixed hybrids naturally occurring. Do I think they exist in real life, by any other means? I don't think so. But, all the tales of mythology with centaurs and all of that, they had, that was bestiality too, just from gods, so I don't know if it counts.
Yeah, that's true. Mythors, stuff like that, yeah.
But as far as like lopping off your arm and replacing it with a bear arm or something like that, first of all, it doesn't work. So no, I don't think they're real at all.
Okay,
but it's way cool fun to think about.
So you're saying not naturally occurring as in the fact of, reproduction or anything, but since you take a science base on things, would you believe that disease could actually cause that, like lycanthropy or other types of disease that cause, I guess in stories or legends of being bitten by a certain animal to be turning into a certain animal, like Spider-Man?
In a way, yes, I do believe that's possible. Through genetic anomalies, we've seen all sorts of crazy stuff happen, conjoined twin myelexia and fraternal sisters who switch DNA in the womb and come out like separately, even though they have different DNA, built into their system. And a lot of venoms from insects and stuff do transmit, biological altering materials. And it's totally possible that someone's got some sort of weird little genetic tick that allows them to assume the qualities of what was injected to them. It sounds mostly science fiction, but technically it's possible.
I believe so. I believe that there's like the possibilities of those little things, maybe not to the crazy aspect of cat eyes or something like that, but I don't know, certain people with certain kinds of cataracts, when the light is shown in their eyes, it's reflected back as similar to a cat eye aspect as far as that's concerned. Then there are other people who have, certain light sensitivities that it would seem that they could have a night vision aspect similar to a feline or whatever. And then, I don't know, personally, I think that there could be some backwoods Mr. McDougal or whatever his name was that
Donald.
No, flat earther dude that decided that he was going to build his own rocket in his backyard to see if the Earth really was flat. I believe that there are backwoods scientists, maybe with more of an actual background in that that would, somehow siphon out the gene for bioluminescence from a certain kind of squid or cuttlefish or whatever, and be able to input that in somebody's skin, so maybe their freckles grow at night, or glow. I said grow, but glow.
Yeah.
Or that's something similar to that. Who's to say?
I read a story. It was a fiction, just to be sure, but this scientist was working with jellyfish DNA, because jellyfish are the only creature that has a species that is immortal, where it instead of dying, it branches off and becomes the next itself, self-replicating. And he had done this with his daughter, and but it affected her that she could only grow to the age of a jellyfish. So she was like 12 or 13 years old, and she'd die and get reborn every time. And he's been taking care of her for almost 100 years now. And I think that kind of thing might be one of the first steps that we do wind up taking. But yeah, it all seems to be like mad scientists. If there are the backwood people, like you said, they're all going to be crazy and evil, I think.
Okay, so instead of just
evil.
Oh yeah, they're evil.
Okay.
Every one of them. It's the first step to take over the world.
Okay, so instead of let's move more into the actual possibility of human animal hybrids. Instead of making humans advance by putting animal traits in them, let's just say talk more about the ideas of centaurs and them and stuff like that, and how you're what you think is a good depiction in movies or art or just ideas of that. So what would you say, Osinius? I mean, what's your favorite centaur?
Chiron, the ancient teacher. I mean, if we're talking explicitly centaurs, I personally, my favorite and the most believable, I suppose, human-animal hybrid from mythology would probably be a faun, a satyr. The part goat, part human. I mean, if you think about that would make more sense to me, because it would still come out. If you had a baby fawn, they haven't grown horns yet. Why are you guys laughing?
Because I know what Poda's thinking. The second you said the most believable is part goat, and Poda's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, because people are fucking goats. Okay. But no, even still, it would be born. Goats aren't born with horns, so that wouldn't really be the biggest issue there. It would be the hooves, but even if they're born, the head comes first and then the hooves come later. And, it's feasible. The horns would grow as the child grew, and then if you have the adult version of that, the adult mom would have teats that the baby could easily suckle from, so to speak. In the aspect of a centaur, I don't know. Is the human part fucking suckling some horse tits, or is it you know what I mean? You gotta think about that kind of stuff.
There's no guarantee.
Feasibly, a satyr or a faun would be more understandable.
There's no need to guarantee that the mother survives the birth either, because with zonkies and mules, how they are. they're hybrids and they're unable to reproduce. And something like that, like you can make that hybrid, make it something actually able to be done. The mom doesn't necessarily have to survive in this scenario, and they could be made as one-offs.
No, but like zonkies and mules and stuff, like the mom is still able to, breastfeed or whatever the proper term for that is, and able to rear the child. The child is not able to reproduce, and therefore that kind of line stops then and there. But they're still able to, and it's still a horse drinking from a horse, or equine creature. We'll just say that, drinking from an equine creature, which is not crazy. But in the service of a centaur, you got. Does the centaur mom have tits? Does a baby centaur prance around on shaky legs and then have to like rear up and to get to the mommy tits of the human, or does it like have to suckle from the droopy teats of a horse? Like, you know what I mean?
Well, even on that aspect, it's like how many times, what's the odds that you think they would actually come out with a DNA mixture where they could actually maneuver and survive on their own in life, like the fawn or the centaur, and not just be amalgamation, mutation of a thing. It's like, man, I think I just need to kill this because that looks horrible and painful. Like that, one of my favorite legends and myths is that of the Jersey Devil, and the two main sources of its arrival is either the mother was going to have her 13th child, which is predominant in both stories, but one of them is the mother was kind of made her out to be a bitch in the sense that she's like, I don't want any more kids, let this be a devil, blah blah blah. And it's like, and then it was. And the other one is she was a full hardcore witch, and she specifically wanted that child. But both stories also have the baby was born normally, and then it changed in front of them into that creature, and then either flew up the chimney or scattered around the room, killed somebody, and out the window. And I don't think, genetically speaking, if a creature like that could be born of that nature. But see, that brings in the whole supernatural aspect, because if it changed afterwards, it made the birth possible, and it probably didn't kill the mother. But then if it was that creature in the womb, it could have busted through her like an alien.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying that it's not necessary that the mom survive. Yes, in like the Jersey Devil case, he transformed after birth, but if he hadn't, that's not saying it's not repeatable. It could happen to 1,000, 1,000 women can give birth to 1,000, we'll say centaurs, because that's the one that seems probably the most painful. And 1,000 women died, but now you have 1,000 centaurs, and they can crossbreed and become their own race, fully.
If there's enough within that number of births that they aren't mutated in the sense of too many limbs, or they could reproduce, or sentience enough to be aware of what's going on.
That's why I say like the most believable would be a satyr or a fawn, because it's just I think if there was like a centaur, it would be like the zonkey or a mule or whatever, where it would not be able to reproduce itself. I don't know, it just is more believable to me, because I mean, who gave birth first? Was it the human to a centaur? Because that would be painful. The mom's dead for sure. Or is it going to be like the horse that gives birth to a centaur?
Oh, that's doable.
Yeah, because then the mom would surely survive.
In that case, that first centaur would have to suckle from horse teats.
Yeah.
And that would start a tradition, probably. It might depend on the origin then.
We got the other thing too. If you're going to talk of it going one way in some sort of freak situation, because let's go from the Dr. Malcolm from Jurassic Park, life finds a way, So if you're thinking of one and it's a freak occurrence, which pushing the bounds of reality is, would or would not be possible, you have to think about the other side too. So a mermaid, top half, woman, bottom half fish, you're going to have to, some of those births, the top half's going to be a fish and the bottom half's going to be a woman, like a reverse mermaid. And the same thing's going to be the truth. Like, you got a BoJack Horseman popping out. You know what I mean?
Speaking of like BoJack Horseman and things like that, what would you guys say, like other human-animal hybrids that it could be like in mythology, like even more in mythology of like Egyptian mythology? The gods, you know what I mean? Each one of them were just about a mixture between a humanoid and a animal figure. And people worship these things. And actually, some say they've seen it. Like even in the Hindu religion, they had the elephant god, and then you have different religions all over the world that have some type of animal human god. So there's also those that we could talk about, and the implications of if people actually seen these, or people believed enough in them to worship them.
And with Christianity, and we are made in God's image and everything, well, with these alternate beliefs, does that mean they believe that they themselves are flawed since they weren't born part animal? If they're idolizing their own gods?
Well, I mean, in that aspect, I don't believe so. I think that they, in my mind, or just my opinion, that the ancient cultures or people of that aspect admired nature, or nature was a wonder. So being fused with that wonder and that mysticalness, because they didn't understand, they understood a lot. They understood a lot more than what we believe they understood back then. But there are some things that we don't even understand about our world today. You know what I mean? So assuming that they didn't understand a little bit more than us, it was kind of mystifying the nature, and how, the hippo or the crocodile were some of the most dangerous gods, or animals. And so they would assume the most powerful things were also, gods as well.
If you think about it and break it down, I mean, even something as simple as like a bat. If we're talking primitive people, they're catching food and doing what they have to survive and what have you. So they catch a bat and they, skin it and eat it. But looking at the skeletal structure is so similar to a human that, you know what I mean, with just some little deformities, like stretching out the fingers of a hand to be like the wing kind of situation. Who's to say that it didn't start from a human? And maybe that's where that came from. I mean, there's a reason that Bat Boy exists.
Bat Boy.
But then again, if you saw some deformity like that, or something like strength, who's to say that they didn't idolize them and hold them above regular humans for their, maybe that was like their link to the gods, which spawned things like Anubis and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, and most of the time, anyone who was seen as a heroic legend and was, usually deified later, they're always the taller, they're always stronger.
Yeah.
So if any of them would have definitely more base animalistic traits, especially as the stories go on, you will tell that story as not that he had a nose that looked kind of like a beak. He had the head of an eagle because he was proud and And so, and it became, it went from simile to metaphor to legend.
Well, there are cultures today, too, on the opposite end of that spectrum, when there's children born with certain deformities that are viewed as incarnations of deities. I think in India, where there are some children born with certain physical deformities, and they are literally worshipped by the town and people around there because they resemble a known deity or godlike being.
Or even if you're going into the aspect of like freak shows, the Elephant Man, or, Lobster Boy, and he had like the deformity, that kind of thing. That those little slight.
It's hard to say if that's praise or slander.
What, for a freak show?
Yeah, it's hard to say which way it goes for that, because some people are impressed and amazed, and obviously they made it the show, but a lot of times they are an attraction just to be ridiculed, too.
I think it would depend on the location of the show on the continent and which country and which culture they're traveling through, because that would also dictate how much money they make. Because if they're in a country where we have so-and-so monkey child in a Malaysian country, we could say they're going to bring in more money because they're not going to view them as a freak of nature or an oddity. They're going to view them as a deity. And they may bring...
Well, that's why you see people like, okay, so the mysticism of it, like gypsy folk who have that kind of mysticism built into their, heritage, are going to hold them in more high regard. So that's why they become like part of circus folk. Whereas you charge into a town full of Puritans, they're going to be run out with fucking mobs with pitchforks,
But I think that's a kind of a misinterpretation of human nature, too. You're saying you'd make more money because he's less ridiculable, when a lot of times people want someone they can throw rotten cabbage at. And you could make more money being a pariah than you could be a messiah.
Yeah, people are dicks.
Yeah, so I mean, whether it's praise or ridicule doesn't influence the income, I would say, really at all, probably. You've got both ends of that spectrum. But how do you know which end it is? You've got lobster claw hands. Whether you're awesome or not, it has to depend person per person who you're talking to. But how do you decide which way the scales weigh? Are you better or worse for having this?
So going along with myths and legends, and because that's going back in time, talking about, let's say you talked about things being embellished a lot. Could you say that a lot of times when you go in, when other cultures would go into another culture and they would fight them and not understand them, like the barbarians and stuff like that, would you think that some of the legends might have exaggerated them and their animal-like instincts to make them more half animal to some of them?
I think that's where you get into some of what Lee was kind of talking about. Like, the angled features. Maybe he had a sharp nose, and so they called him this eagle face guy or whatever.
Well,
but some cultures would take the bones of those animals and adorn themselves with as armor or whatever. So maybe they killed a huge eagle and wore that helmet, like the skull as a helmet somehow. That would, the opposing army would say that, oh man, they're eagle men,
Historically and mythologically, it has gone both ways. There has also been talks of hybrids where it's actually exemplifying the fact that, like centaurs, for instance, for Greek mythology, where even though Chiron went towards the human side and became a smart teacher and everything, all the other centaurs had gone animalistic, and they were nothing more than horses that looked human up top. And so you can see where it can go both ways. And plus, you'll have people, and I think it might generally be whether or not they are seen as good or evil. Generally, the people with more evil traits are said to have become more animal, whereas in the people who are good, they're saying they have adopted animal traits and become better for it. So is it someone who's surpassed and become part bear, part ape or whatever for this extra ability? Or is it someone who's become part demon and now they have the goat horns and they're not satyrs, they're demons now, whether they are or not?
Yeah, I can get that. We can definitely get behind that. I think that animal-human hybrids, I believe that they have been around, like, in the past. I personally believe that we had way more knowledge than what we thought they did. So, getting into the experimentations and things like that, I believe they tried to do some of the genetic altering to human bodies, and so, and I also believe that there's a lot of things that we didn't quite understand what's been around, you know what I mean? So actual human-animal hybrids today, I don't truly believe they exist. In the fact that, someone out there would be a werewolf or someone out there would be a were-panther or, things like that. But, they could have, I know there's people out there that feel like they have that type of energy inside them, which makes them act a certain way, but actually growing fur and then growing their teeth out and becoming an animal or turning into an animal, period, I don't believe people can actively do.
I see what you're saying, but it is the flights of fancy, taking werewolves, for example, an extraordinarily hairy man, Butch the bear, who is a gay man by day, but hairy, and, when he puts on his clothes and he's walking around, he's got a haircut and, he's got a cropped beard. But he wears clothes and he's mild mannered during the day. During those certain cycles of the moon, lunacy and what have you, can be quite bestial. And when he takes off his clothes, nobody. I've seen some Italian folk that, like, you take off that shirt, holy jeez, you're wearing a sweater. And so, like, when they're in that aspect, something that you would normally not see them acting that crazy bestial way that you would never expect, and you run into that kind of person in the woods at night, especially if they're a large male, you know what I mean, and they're being vicious, and like you come upon him eating a deer, how would you not? I mean, rationally in people's minds, they would say it was an insane wolf man, you know, and there you go.
I was about to ask, like, show us on the doll where that guy hurt you.
Oh, he sat down and it sounded like a bag of leaves. No, it was, but you, but you know what I'm talking about.
Well, you're like, when he takes his shirt off and becomes an animal. I'm like, oh no. No.
But see, stuff like that happens. And for people to rationalize it in their mind, it is much easier to say that that person was part beast than say that that person was a beast, so to say. You know what I mean?
No, and I agree to a point in the sense that, like, today, if someone were to come across Butch in the woods, they'd be like, okay, he's on drugs, and we need to back away slowly. But that could be determined by the person that finds him. Because if the person is, for the term of super spiritual and 100% believes these types of creatures exist, that may be their first go-to, not drugs.
Yeah.
Sasquatch.
Well, just like the whole bath salt situation. Somebody got fucking high off of bath salts and bit somebody's face. Do we say that, no, this person was just some crazed person off of this random drug? No, the instant word that people used was zombie. They turned into a zombie and they're running to do it. You know what I mean? So that flight of fancy becomes very real when you're confronted with this situation that should not normally occur.
And it also doesn't help that that specific strain was a analog of PCP, which means that's why he was able to be shot like 15 times and still keep going, which also added to the zombie effect.
Yeah, it lends more credence to that flight of fancy.
Now,
So PCP makes zombies.
Only in Florida. Not here. Only in Florida.
Well, and it's like those, like The Village. You know what I mean? The movie The Village, where they had their, like, monsters or whatever. You chop off a boar's head or skin it or whatever, and you add, like, some porcupine quills and stuff like that. And even just weirdos that want to dress in these animal skins and run around in the woods. Now it's this fanciful, like, humanoid monster that is part human, part animal, you know?
Now, in their defense, they knew she was blind. In their defense, they knew nothing of the outside world. They were all grown up, completely isolated, like so many generations.
Actually, it was only like 2
Yeah,
generations.
that wasn't so many generations. The older people were the initial. They knew what's going on.
Yeah, but the generations that were born there and grew up there as children.
Generation. There was
They had the elder, they had the middle, and then they had the children. That's at least 2 generations. Because there was kids in that movie.
The kids were the only ones that didn't know.
No, the middle ones didn't know either. The early 20s.
This is how bad the movie was. We don't remember.
I do remember.
What would you consider the percentage, though? When we say animal-human hybrid, are we talking 50-50, 60-40, 70-30? What would actually be a hybrid calculation to where we could categorize them as they are a hybrid and not as like, this guy is definitely goat, but a little human in there?
Do we speak scientifically, or you mean just casually?
Yeah, we can go both.
Because I would have to say that just personally, if I was going to call something part, it would have to have a very human feature that I could tell on sight. You know, if you see a wolf with human eyes, it's going to freak you out, and that's a hybrid.
That would be weird.
Yeah, if you see a horse with human hands, that's you're just going to go scrub your brain out with soap later.
Where are those hands at?
That just put a funny picture in my head. That's hilarious.
Are the hands like right here, so it'd be like this?
Like
Or
a
are they on their
T-Rex?
hooves?
Instead of hooves, it's running on palms.
I would more believe it to be a foot. It's easier to believe feet.
Okay. Human feet.
I just made it funny to me.
Like, think of a giraffe
Okay.
with human feet.
Let me think of something a little less funny. How about like a naga, like a Medusa with a snake tail and a human top? That's a much clearer 50-50. But I would have to say if it was a complete snake with like
ears.
I don't know, ears and a human hair,
Medusa, what if Medusa was just
Scott
super
Phillips.
unlucky, like super unlucky. There was like an anaconda that was swallowing her like up to her waist, and like a bunch of snakes that were biting onto her scalp. And they're like, "Look at this crazy snake woman." She's like, "Help me! Help!"
Wow. They don't want none unless you have buns. So.
Well, she had a milkshake and it brought all the snakes to the yard.
Oh, jeez. Scientifically speaking, though, it could be not obvious at all and just have human pieces of DNA floating around in your system. And, scientifically that would count. But as an observer, as someone, hunting the hybrid, I wouldn't count it.
Something, even less noticeable, I guess, would be like a monkey man, I guess a Sasquatch kind of deal. But like, have you seen, like you mentioned the wolf with humans' eyes? Have you seen like those murder monkeys in the woods that are like insane? Like some of these chimpanzees that like commit vicious like murders against their members of their society or whatever. And if you look at one of them in the eyes, like it looks like a human eye that's like staring at you, like I'm gonna murder you.
Nope, never seen that.
Ah.
I live in America.
I've seen every Planet of the Apes movie. I know exactly what you're talking about.
That was a documentary filmed in real time.
Now,
there's a video game with a bunch of murder monkeys in it.
I like the idea of adding just random human parts to animals. Like, what about a snake with a human mouth? They just smile at you?
No.
That'd be
the
weird.
Hair and sunglasses and an ear would be crazy. Because you can put little hats on them.
Or a full-on snake, but it's got little front arms. And has to kind of army crawl everywhere it goes.
Like a reverse tadpole.
That's cool.
I think it's funny to think of the weird hybrids that don't exist. A horse with human hands, like instead of that is just such a funny image in my brain.
Or like
Trollocs.
Or if you have animals that have horns like deers or something, but it is hands and they can feel with them.
So in mating season they're playing mercy with each other?
I would say thumb wrestling.
Yes.
Thumb war. Which is really disturbing in the spring when they fall off.
That would be.
They send the skin down to bone.
Father and child out hunting for the first time. It's like, why are there hands everywhere? It's like, it's fine. That means there's deer around here.
Birds with arms instead of wings.
They would never fly. They'd be like fucking spider monkeys going through the trees.
Man, what would you think if there was like a human hybrid of a praying mantis? That'd be weird.
Oh, man.
Which part?
I don't know. Does it have to be a 50-50 like a centaur, or could it be like a human that
it
is
just has
human?
Mantis front arms.
It's a human that bites
and has the legs and can like hide in trees.
So
they eat corgis.
See, I'm thinking of a normal sized praying mantis, maybe a little bit bigger like a chihuahua, but it just has a human head, but a complete mantis body.
A mantis as big as a chihuahua could kill us. Like, you understand that. A mantis as big as a chihuahua could kill you. You, the 6 foot tall POTA. It would grab on, and there's nothing you could do.
Okay, I can't go through this whole episode without at least bringing up Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the mutagen. There's another way to create hybrids.
With science.
A rat in a sewer?
Yeah, well, I would see, we were talking about the bees. It made me think of Baxter Stockman, who was part fly.
Oh, yeah. I think that's interesting.
Like Bebop and Rocksteady?
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If I remember in Ninja Turtle lore, the ooze, it worked like the last creature you came into contact with, it hybridized with the DNA because it was still on you, which is why the last creatures like the turtles and the rat came in contact with was a human before they found the mutagen, which is why they put Bebop and Rocksteady in the cages with a rhino and a boar.
Right, now that's the original cartoon. The new movies went differently, and they said that every human's got some sort of natural animal in their DNA from way back when, which is really bull hockey. I'd rather believe the original mutagen story than that.
They're just trying to get away from science.
Trying to get away from science by making it more scientifically explainable.
That description makes it way more spiritual than scientific, in my opinion. The whole inhabit familiar animal spirit Native American thing.
It's like spirit animal.
Yeah, what a cheap shot. Because what if you are like, I mean, I guess that could be funny in the sense that big, broly, badass dude, your spirit animal is a canary.
Or
on the upside,
hummingbird.
On the upside, that's job security because you can work in mines.
What are the?
Gee,
what
you
are?
die first.
Yeah, you would die first. There wouldn't. What's the possibility of you being like an awesome fighter and then all of a sudden it's like your spirit animal is a North American box turtle and you're just like, what am I going to do now? You know what I mean? Like,
change up you're more defensive now.
Yeah, except for the actual being able to defend yourself, unless you grew the shell.
yeah, it's like your spirit animal is a hedgehog. Neat.
Your spirit animal is a hermit crab. And so now you're like gathering sleds to tie around your body.
Or you like put your butt in chairs and you just be like, nope, can't do it. And then put your butt in another chair and be like, yep, this still doesn't feel like home.
I do that anyway.
So your spirit animal is a hermit crab.
And yeah, I would never leave IKEA.
You know what? I could see you being like, a, and then like click, 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 click.
Okay, so continuing on and then taking a little bit of a turn with the conversation. If you could be an animal hybrid, what would you want to be?
That's a tough one. So many options out there. A centaur would generally be really cool if that means I could be automatically a good archer. But you'd have a hell of a time getting anywhere and fitting anywhere. Forget using a toilet. So I think that one might be out.
You wouldn't have to use a toilet though. Like that doesnn't matter. You just take your tail and wipe it around. Like I mean, like.
And who would call you out on it?
Your body is made to poop.
How do you get, like, you see these centaurs with six packs? What kind of ab exercises are they doing? Are they bending down? Are they?
They're freaking holding their body upright the whole time. If they ever let their stomach muscles go, they just fall forward.
That is a hilarious premise. So, baby centaurs.
What?
The horse head can stand up and wobble, but the front is just head hanging on the ground, trying to push stuff up.
Like a baby head wobbles, except it's the whole upper half.
They're also wobbly, so they're like.
See, I don't think Lee would like to be a centaur, only because all his friends would use him and like be like, "Hey, buddy, can you help me move?" Or, "Hey, yo, I need a ride."
Yeah, Lee's a real workhorse.
My boss has been riding me all day. Yeah, you're right.
Because you would have a hard time saying no, especially because you know that you would be able to do it and they would need you. You'd be like, yeah, let's go to Walmart.
So I've been watching a lot of Wildcrats, and that's kind of the idea where they've got suits on and it transforms them into this basic hybrid.
Dude, out of all of them, I think the Peregrine Hog Fountain powers were pretty cool.
Yeah.
Fastest flying bird.
Fastest flying animal or fastest moving animal.
Yeah.
They can reach up to like over 100 miles per hour.
In a straight line.
Yeah, but then they can stop that 100 miles per hour in an instant.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing.
Not to go off topic, but I saw a meme not too long ago, and it was of this woman holding a hawk. And the hawk is looking at the camera all confused and such. And the person wrote the thing at the bottom and said, my mom just caught this hawk going after one of her chickens. Look at the confusion in its face. Like, you know what I mean? It was diving down from one of the chickens. This lady just caught it. I'd be confused too. I'd be like, I was eating. No, I'm not.
That lady's part fucking cheetah.
Dude, I don't know, man. They got a lot of cool, like any animal that they use, even though pigeons they make them seem like they're cool animals, but they kind of have to because it's a kid's show. But
I wouldn't mind being a minotaur-shaped panther.
What?
Minotaur-shaped panther.
Yeah, that's the most succinct way I can describe it. You know, so I've got my full body shape, but I've got the head of a panther, but enough mouth structure that I can still speak.
You mean like King or something like that?
Yeah, like King.
Oh, yeah.
His was a mask, but yeah. Yeah.
Dude, I didn't know that it was a mask. I thought it was just some kind of lion, leopard dude.
But, he was like a luchador, like, wrestler guy.
I mean, if I'm allowed to be a hybrid, give me that, but also give me wings. Like dragon wings. Like leathery bat wings.
Yeah, but wouldn't those be your arms?
No, on my back.
You just want extra wings.
If I can pick, give them to me.
Oh, well, fair enough, yeah. Okay, Nat, what would you want to be?
I guess I would go with a minotaur type thing. That thing seems kind of cool. There ain't nobody that's like, oh, look, it's a minotaur. Usually, they're scared of it.
Now, would you want, like, the cloven hooves and all that kind of shit?
Well, it wouldn't matter. Well, it just depends.
Minotaur.
I guess, yeah. I mean, why not? Why not go?
What if you're a mini-tour?
I said minotaur, not mini-tour. This is like mini soda.
Yeah, fierce, bestial human hybrid that is 4 foot even.
He may be little, but he packs a big punch.
It's a Capri Sun.
What about you, Poda?
I have no idea.
Werewolf.
No.
Sloth.
Three-toed sloth.
giant ground sloth from back in the day.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about them.
I really don't know. I've never thought about this.
Everybody has thought about being some type of animal.
Well, I've always thought animals were cool, except for that short stint of a years ago where there were a lot of drugs involved.
Okay, what about you? What did you want to be?
I would be some crazy bird man. If Lee gets wings coming out his back, fuck it, I'll get wings coming out of my back. And I'd have, like, eagle talons, like his feet. Imagine the size of my feet if those were, like, clawed talons. Oh, man, to jump kick somebody, rip their face off. Wow,
Shoes would be horrible for you, though.
Why are you ripping people's faces off?
What?
Why are you ripping people's faces off?
Because they're making fun of me for being some weird bird dude.
Okay.
Shut up, Boomer, you big bird.
I mean, that sounds way more like legal issues than just why is there a giant pile of bird shit on my car?
They would have to catch you first.
Yep, I need to take a dump. Take it to the air.
I'm going to introduce you to my brother. I got to warn you, don't mention the bird thing.
Yeah, but then you walk in the door, he sees you, he's like, what are you looking at? You looking at my beak? You looking at my beak?
I'm doing like one of these little things in a wing, like, what's his problem?
And I think that's amazing about predatory birds is they always look majestic from the side. But if you look at them dead on, their eyes are this close together, and they always look a little derpy because of the binocular vision.
Yeah, you're not wrong. They do look a little derpy.
Well, we definitely talked about a lot of different things. You know, bestiality, POTA's view on it. You know, elite science view, and you got the dude ripping faces off and pooping on cars. So we definitely talk about tons of different aspects of the animal-human hybrid. I feel like I've learned some things, and, you know, maybe I didn't learn anything. Who knows? But I definitely had fun with this, and we'd like to thank you guys, especially, you know, the guys that are here. Dr. Lee.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you. Okay. And then
What up?
Phineas.
Lee says hello, and I say goodbye.
Yes. And then POTA.
Aloha.
Oh, snap.
Oh, snap. Snap indeed. Well, we'd like to thank you for listening to our show, and have a great evening, all.
Well, we'd like to thank you for joining us today's episode. If you'd like, you can directly contact us with any questions at ratingthefringe@brainforger.com. We'd really appreciate it if you would give us a like, share, or follow, and comment on any of the episodes that you've listened to. We're on Facebook, Spotify, or anywhere else that you get your podcast fix. Thank you for being here with us while we raid the Fringe.